Hello and welcome back to the Life at Leyton podcast, and we are in rainy Dublin today to sit down for a conversation with Brion Evers, one of our business development managers here in Ireland. Brion, to kick us off, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
No worries.
You were our first business development hire in Ireland. Can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have worked here in Dublin in various sales roles in the last 10 years. Started more so door-to-door commission-only sales, kind of pivoted more into traditional tech sales, and then in the last few years lent more towards like fintech and kind of different, I mean, just to, I guess, frame it, the last couple of roles before this, I was working at Revolut, selling Revolut business accounts to companies here in Ireland. Then I worked for a company called Wayflyer who were selling growth funding to US-based e-commerce businesses. And then, funny enough, one of the big parts of that was that I was telling Wayflyer how excited I was to be, part of an Irish company, helping the Irish economy, like funding Irish businesses. And then they stuck me on the US team. So I think in some ways I was always destined to end up here.
We're delighted to have you, and I think having that real passion for the mission and what it is that we're trying to do to help Irish businesses, it speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I love also that you started on door knocking,
Yeah.
so it's been a nice trajectory into a little bit more B2B sales. You've mentioned a few different roles and you've worked in a few kind of startup environments in the past. How have you found that at Leyton? How have you found that kind of getting the team up and running here in Ireland?
Yeah, so actually, funny enough, when Leyton initially approached me, I had no idea who they were. So that kind of tracks, right? Because we always talk about now with customers, like we're the largest R&D tax consultancy that you've never heard of. And I was one of those people. I would say that it's really nice to work here in the sense that we do have the backing of the global group, 3,000 odd employees across 18 countries, but we have the ability to kind of function as a startup within that wider ecosystem. So we can make quick decisions, we can kind of change things if we need to, we can really kind of attack the market whichever way we see fit, and kind of it's like a continuous process of kind of looking at what works and looking at what's resonating, but then we know when we're actually in kind of a position to succeed that we have the backing of the global group and the resources and all of that behind us. So it's been amazing, actually. It's been a unique experience, but it's been really good so far.
I'm glad to hear it. We talk about entrepreneurialism as something that's at the heart of Leyton's business, and I think you're really feeling that on the ground in Ireland, as you say, with the group's backing, but you're really in that start-up, beginning of something phase, which you have a lot of ownership over the direction of where that will go, and that's a great place to be.
Absolutely. I mean, when myself and Dara Gaffney joined the business, so I joined back in August. Dara had joined a couple of months before that. I'm sure many people listening to this even know who Dara is. I mean, he didn't pay me to say this, but if there's anybody that could be the tip of the spear and can really kind of shape what the future of Leyton Ireland is going to be, it's going to be Dara. He's very well known, very well thought of in the R&D community. I don't think I have talked to anybody yet in the last 6 months that didn't know of him, at least. So from there, we now have, I think, 9 people in the Dublin office.
I mean, it's ambition. There's a lot of ambition in the Irish colleague base, and led by Dara and people like yourself as part of that. But there's definitely the market for it, and the success that you've had since joining. You've been here since August, like you mentioned. You've really, really hit the ground running. What do you think's made the difference there? Why is it going so well? What does it look like day to day?
I mean, I can't take all the credit. I think it's an indication of the size of the opportunity here in Ireland from an R&D tax credits perspective. I've probably tripled what I was expected to do in the first 6 months, with no signs of slowing down. And again, I think that's more a reflection of the market and the timing and like the size of the opportunity of what we could actually, and like I suppose it also is a reflection on the level of service and the value that we can actually provide to the customers. But yeah, no, it's been a crazy time. I think more than anything else, it's because, you know, I like to say we're a company of adults, you know, a company of people that, you know, A players only. We only have, you know, people that have their heads screwed on, that have years of experience, that have, you know, maybe we're fairly new in our efforts to re-enter the Irish market. I guess to take a step back in case the listeners want a bit of history on it. Leyton have been around since the mid-90s. You know, it's one of the largest, if not the largest, R&D consultancy in Europe. Leyton continue to operate, continue to win, continue to learn, you know, how to kind of provide the most value to all of our customers. And when I started, I had a team of experts from the sales side, from the consulting side, just a number of people always ready to help, always ready to jump on a call and answer any questions. Like, I honestly, I was set up for success from day one. So as much as people might try and give me the credit, I think it actually is like I always say the single best asset that we have at Leyton is the people that are already here. I mean, it's not every day you come into a business where the vast majority of the people that you talk to have been here 5, 6, 7 years and beyond. I think that just says a lot to the culture that's been built and the quality of the people. And then, you know, you do have that ongoing support. So even when, you know, even when things maybe are a little bit more complex, like I'm still fairly new to even selling these forms of innovation funding, but we always have somebody on hand to kind of jump on a call or help out when needed. You know, I think just to put a little bow on it, here in the Irish office, we are really trying to build that culture of like high performance, you know, I always say set the standard, keep it high, no excuses, but also that element of we have each other's back. So like if somebody needs someone to jump on the call, or if we need some help, or if whatever it is, we're always going to look out for one another, and I think that's already speaking volumes. So
definitely, and it goes back to what you said at the start about that really agile startup feel and the close-knit team that you're developing here in Ireland, backed by the years of experience coming from the incumbent European business, right, that's able to stand there and support you guys, and bring a level of experience and expertise to help with the client delivery. So just going from strength to strength, really. And I think you do need to give yourself some credit, because it doesn't work unless you work hard. So business development as a career and as a skill set, I think, can feel very different from one company to the next. So what's been distinctive for you in finding success at Leyton? And I know you've spoke about the support and the team and everything like that, but is there anything, one particular thing you can maybe pull out as the key differentiator? I
just think it's like now more than ever, people are going to value relationship driven kind of interactions. And I also think that people really seem to appreciate that we have, you know, we've established the Irish entity. It's Irish people selling to other Irish business owners. There's kind of a built-in familiarity, as you know, we've talked about in the past. Me being able to just pick up a phone to even just call a company cold and say, hey, you know, what's the story? Brion here from Leyton. It's a little bit more informal. I think now more than ever, human connection is going to be valued above all else. And I think I have been set up in such a way that, you know, Leyton will more than happy for you to go meet somebody for coffee in person, or jump in a car down to an event down in Cork, or jump in a plane off to one of the other offices, whatever it might be that puts you in a position to have that genuine interaction in person. They're actually leading with that from the front. So I think if we continue to do that, we're just gonna dominate, really. Yeah,
no, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's definitely what we hear speaking to business owners here in Ireland, and people in decision-making capacity here in Ireland. So for anyone listening right now who might not fully understand the R&D tax credit scheme in Ireland, how do you explain it in simple terms, and why should businesses be paying attention? Why is it important to them?
So, I mean, I guess in simple layman's terms, the R&D tax credit scheme allows you to claim up to 30% of all qualifying expenditure back as a cash refund or can offset against your CT1 filing. That since the 1st of January of this year is actually increasing to 35%. So, I mean, for every €100 essentially that you're spending on innovation within the company, you can get 35 quid of that back into your pocket. It's pretty decent. I'd also say that there's a lot of misunderstandings about the scheme. That, you know, for example, I hear all the time, oh, but we don't do any R&D. Like we've no lab. We don't work on anything like that. Or, like we're not creating anything new or novel. When actually the most updated definition is more along the lines of, as long as you are appreciably trying to improve any process, system, product or service in a way that, you know, is, I guess, noticeably better than anything that's off the shelf, or I guess the things that are off the shelf are not quite hitting the mark, or it wasn't easily deducible by another competent professional, and you actually had to invest your time, money, energy, resources into solving the problem yourself for the business, chances are there's going to be some qualifying expenditure. And then I guess so I usually frame it like that, but then I'll also mention that in the last number of years, there's been so many changes to what can be kind of included in the overall scope of an R&D claim. For example, there would have been only 3 or 4 generic sentences in the legislation from a software perspective. That since has now expanded to about 3.5 pages. So everything around AI, machine learning, all that good stuff has now been taken into account, and a lot of businesses that may have looked into this in the past and thought, sure, we've nothing there, when actually, in actual fact, in reality, there's a lot that they'll be able to claim back into the business.
You mentioned that now it's 35% tax benefit to businesses. You also mentioned there was a few other changes around the legislation. Why is it that those changes have been made? What is revenue trying to encourage?
Yes.
And what sort of businesses are they trying to encourage to claim?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think that the latest figure that I saw was that out of the 300,000 businesses registered, give or take, here in Ireland, only about 1,500 of them actually took advantage of the scheme last year. Now, it's probably a little bit of updating since then, but it's a very underutilized mechanism. And let's be honest, it's a source of non-dilutive funding for businesses that typically need a lot of funding. So I think that the changes have come into play more than anything else to actually actively encourage businesses to take advantage of the scheme. Say, look, we can put €35 of every €100 spent on that project back into your pocket.
I think that it's clear from the numbers you've said there that the scheme historically has been dominated by the multinationals coming in and utilising the scheme as it is. And I know that from speaking to yourself and speaking to business owners in Ireland myself, there's often a fear of revenue, right? That I don't want to stick my head above the parapet, I don't want to put a claim in case it brings light onto the business, that it would rather just not have that inspection on what we're doing. Why is that a misconception, or how can we myth bust that for people who might be eligible?
I think, not to bring it back to Leyton, but I think that only just further emphasises the need for a specialist in the area. We know what we're doing. We've been doing this for a million years, feels like. It's our bread and butter. So I think the thing I usually lean on when I hear that from clients is that we actually include our full 4-year audit protection as standard within our fee structure. That then gives them the peace of mind that we actually have to stand over anything that we submit, and that we not only have maybe just somebody on hand to help, but that we have an entire team dedicated to basically defending anything that Leyton puts forward from an R&D tax credit perspective. And usually that will give them the peace of mind that, like, okay, not only are we going to fully maximize the value of this claim, not only are the expert consultants on hand going to make sure it's airtight from a compliance standpoint, but we also have that extra layer of protection of that inquiry defence team.
Yeah, and I think it's that walk stepping people through that process, if it does, because I mean, I can imagine it's not a fun day if you get a letter through the door saying that revenue wants to take a look at a previous claim, but it's having the team at your back, right, that's going to be able to walk you through that process and defend the claim on your behalf, I think is what maybe differentiates us from working with your accountant or working with another provider.
Yeah, and I do also think that part of it is when people don't understand, they get nervous. So like they think, oh, like that seems very complicated, and you know, we're not in the business of punching down here, but I will say that we hear it all the time when people have looked into it in the past, that it's just not worth the energy and effort for what you actually get back, when in reality that's not the case. That I think there's been a focus on those multinationals that you mentioned and these big benefits, you know, $500,000, multi-million, whatever it is. It's usually, you know, very kind of skewed towards those giant multinational companies that are going to like really make sure they get every last cent from this incentive, when in fact I actually think the future of Leyton will be shaped on becoming that go-to consultancy for small and medium-sized enterprise. Like, you know, any of the big four may not be super excited about, you know, working with a client that will get 70,000 euros back into their business. That might seem like small fries to them, but like to a small business, if they could get 70,000 euro of non-dilutive funding, cash, that's life-changing for them. And I think when we continue to focus on that and to kind of, I guess, as you said, myth bust like the complexities and de-risk it as much as possible, handhold them through the whole process, and just make them realize that this really is something that they should have been taking advantage of all along. I think even 12 months from now, things will look very different for Leyton.
Yeah, so. I mean, I think that SME community has been vastly underserved in Ireland for a long time, and I think we've, in the last few years of coming back in and building the team up here, that's where we really have made a difference. And as you say, for a small business, 70,000 euros is game changing and will fund a whole host of new projects, and that's what's going to take businesses to the next level, right? And maybe they won't be SMEs for long because they're innovating, they're continuing to grow, and they're making use of the tax benefit that's available to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking ahead, we're obviously growing the team. You mentioned the ambitious growth plans for the next 12, 18 months. What advice would you give to someone who is listening to this and is considering a sales role at Leyton? What mindset or behaviours do you think really sets our high performers apart? Okay,
well, I mean, I could talk about this for 2 hours, so very good question. I think first and foremost, an entrepreneurial spirit. I think if you come in here and expect everything to kind of just be laid out in front of you, and you just have to kind of hammer the round peg into the round hole and just scale that. No, that's not what this is going to be. You have to come in here ready to take ownership, ready to take accountability. These are not just buzzwords. Like, genuinely, the thing that sets most of the top performers apart here in Leyton is just their ability to say, no, this is my little piece of the business. I'm going to nurture these prospects, I'm going to run these deals, and I'm going to basically hold myself accountable to the highest possible standard, almost like deliver like the white glove approach from start to finish, and holding yourself accountable to that with every interaction. But again, it comes down to, like, are you actually the type of person that, like, have you ever invested in any external sales training? Like, are you fanatical about sales frameworks like Medic or Command of the Message or Challenger? Like, how deep have you actually gone into those and said, okay, how do I use these tools And again, by not losing yourself in the process either. I think I often tell people who are considering any role in sales in any company, not just Leyton, it's like, if you are a charismatic, like chatty, warm person who can disarm somebody quite quickly, chances are you're going to be very good at sales, because like a lot of this stuff is process driven. A lot of it can be taught. A lot of the frameworks and the kind of step by step that exists is something that you can teach. But that little 10% difference is really just your ability to do it in a way that's authentic to who you are as a person. And I often say, especially in Ireland, if you can make them laugh, you'll get the sale.
Yeah.
So that's the advice.
No, I think that's perfect. And like you say, there's a lot, that sounds to me like someone who's driven and cares a lot about their professional acumen, but also just is a good person and is able to listen, is able to relate to people. And I think something that's come across in this conversation and conversations we've had before, Brion, is you're just passion for helping businesses in Ireland. I think if you're driven by that, that's something that this is a perfect role for someone who is driven by that passion.
Absolutely. If you want to know that you had a direct impact in this company's phase of growth, like you were the reason that they got, a couple of €100,000 back into their business, something they'd never even tried to do before, and you were the catalyst to that, that's pretty fulfilling. Again, if you're leading more so into the relationship building and nurturing side of it as well, not only are you setting yourself up for success this year, but for many years to come as you're continuing to nurture those relationships. So, set the foundation, set the standard high, and then just put your head down, do the work. That's all it is. And
Great.
The rest will look after itself.
Absolutely. So to finish off today, I believe that you've hosted your very own podcast. So you've been a guest this time, but you've hosted your own podcast in basketball for a few years now. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so I guess the very long story short is that I've played basketball my whole life. You wouldn't think it looking at me. I'm 5'10" on a tall day, but I'm a lefty shooter. Leave me open. I'm going to hit that shot. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to be that pest that you wish was on your team. That's kind of my mentality when it comes to playing. But I've been a big fan of the New York Knicks for a long time. Was brought to my first game actually for my 16th birthday with my dad, and got to see the Knicks play the Philadelphia 76ers. It was the time, for anyone listening that's actually a fan of the history of the game, we're talking about, Allen Iverson era Sixers up against Nate Robinson at the point, 5'9" superstar. Maybe there was a part of me that thought, if this fella, I'm taller than him, I could probably do it, right? So so that was a transformational experience for me. Fell in love with New York as a city, fell in love with the team, and I've been a massive fan ever since. So I'm 35 now, so you can do the math. I've never missed a game. I go to several games every year. There's a lot of gravity that pulls me towards everything that, New York City represents, and the Knicks are just kind of a byproduct of that. And then basically, I listen to a lot of podcasts myself around basketball, the NBA, and I love listening to those type of discussions. I said, you know what, I could probably do this. So the idea was to just pick up a microphone and react to every single game, give my thoughts, like an unfiltered kind of approach. Now, every game, given that it's an 82-game season for every team, it became a little bit harder to manage. So it went from every game to every week, and then probably every other week. But, at the height of the podcast, we're probably getting 4,000 downloads a month, which is not, massive numbers, but it's something. And it's on a bit of a pause right now because everything with Leyton has gotten quite busy. But I'm very passionate about the podcast space. I think it's a beautiful platform for long form, kind of in-depth conversation. And I think, if it's around the topic that you're passionate about, even better.
I couldn't agree more. I think everyone knows how I feel about podcasts if they're listening to this podcast, and they've listened to any of the Life at Leyton podcast episodes before. I didn't think you could be more passionate than about innovation funding in Ireland, but you've just surprised me with the basketball passion. It's great to hear, and I can tell why you wanted to, I guess, take that passion again and put it into a project outside of work. That does bring me on to the fact that you're going to be sitting in my seat from us now moving forward, and you're going to be bringing that, I guess, experience you've had with your own podcast and maybe filling a gap if you've not got much time to do the personal podcast at the moment by taking over and looking after Life at Leyton podcast moving forward. So thank you for agreeing to take that on, and I guess
surprise.
What's your vision for it? Like what are you hoping to get from that experience?
I just think, when you're looking for a new role, I think it's become more and more important to have more than just like a website that somebody can check out, or even like Instagram or any type of social media. I think more and more people are looking for content like this, long form, in-depth conversation about areas that you could potentially be already quite passionate about, or maybe you're thinking about getting involved. Like, if we could create some kind of platform where genuine conversation around sales, business, innovation funding, and give insights that might just spark some interest with anyone listening, or just honestly just give us a chance to honestly put a spotlight on the amazing stuff that we're doing here in Ireland, and just maybe like, if you want to feel like you're hanging out with me for a half an hour every other month, happy days, and I think it will open up a lot more doors than we even realised today if it's done right. So hopefully I can take on the mantle and continue to take us to the next stage of where we're going.
Yeah, I can't wait to listen to it and be surprised by the content of the episodes. But yeah, really looking forward to seeing where it goes with you at the helm. And yeah, I guess that wraps us up for today. I guess a thank you to everyone listening, for everyone who's listened along to the episodes that I've been involved in. Brion, thank you for joining and having a conversation today, and looking forward to seeing the podcast move to new heights.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for having me, and plenty more to come, so watch this space.